Hello everyone, welcome back to the 101 Library. In today's video, we're going to dive into one of the fundamental concepts in programming, loops. Specifically, we will be looking at for and while loops in MATLAB, and we will also cover nested loops. Loops are essential for automating repetitive tasks and are a crucial part of any programmer's toolkit. So let's get started. First, let's talk about the for loop. A for loop is used when you know in advance how many times you want to execute a statement or a block of statements. Here is the basic syntax of a for loop in MATLAB. You start with a for statement, an index, you can choose it to be anything you want, a starting value, an end value, and statements to execute. And you have to end your for loop with an end statement. Let's look at an example where we use for loop to calculate the square of a number from 1 to 5, then print it on the screen. To do so, I will choose my index to be I, my starting value to be 1, my end value to be 5, and then for my statements to execute, I will calculate the square of my I value. I'll call it S, and then a printing statement. Then I'll run my code, and as you can see, the square of numbers from 1 to 5 is calculated and displayed on the screen. Pretty easy, right? Now let's move on to while loops. A while loop repeats a statement or a group of statements while a given condition is true. It tests the condition before executing the loop body, and then it executes the statements inside the loop. Here is the basic syntax of a while loop in MATLAB. You start with a while statement, a condition, then you list your statements to execute, and you end with an end statement. Let's look at an example where we use a while loop to print numbers from 1 to 5. For while loops, you have to define your index before. In this case, I'll say I equals 1. Then for my condition, I'll check if I less than or equal 5. Then for my statements to execute, I'll have a printing statement. For while loops, before your end statement, you have to always have a statement that increases your index by a certain value you choose. In this case, the value will be 1. So I'll have I equals I plus 1. And my loop is completed. Let's run this. And you can see that the loop runs as long as the I value is less or equal to 5. We start with an I value equal to 1, print the number, and then increment I by 1 each time the loop runs. Next, let's look at nested for loops in MATLAB. A nested loop is a loop inside the body of another loop. Let's look at an example of a nested for loop that prints a 3x3 multiplication table. I will delete all this code, start my loop. I'll start with my first for loop. I'll say for my first index, I'll choose it to be I equals 1, 2, 3. Then I'll end this loop, and inside my first loop I'll add my second loop, and I'll type my second loop to be 4. I'll choose my index to be j from 1 to 3, and then I'll end that loop again. For my statements to execute, I'll type them inside my second loop. In this case, I'll calculate the product of I times j. Then I'll have a printing statement. And my code is complete. Let's run this code. We mistyped this. I'll run my code again. And you can see that the code prints a 3x3 multiplication table. In this code, the other for loop runs from 1 to 3, and for each iteration of the other loop, the inner loop also runs from 1 to 3. The product of I and j is calculated and printed for each pair of I and j. And that's it. We've covered the basics of for loop, while loop, and nested loops in MATLAB. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel. Thanks for watching.